From a very first moment, she knew something wasn't right. It was early morning, the cemetery still damp with dew, when Margaret, a grieving widow dressed in black, made her way to her late husband's grave. She had done this every week since the tragic accident that had taken him from her. But on this day, her ritual was broken, because someone else was already there. Kneeling silently by the tombstone was a little boy, no older than 10, his skin dark, his hands clutching a small bouquet of white lilies. His lips moved as if whispering secrets only the dead could hear. Margaret froze. She had never seen him before. Her heart pounded. Who was this child? Why was he here at her husband's grave? Margaret's husband, Charles, had been a respected man in the community, a loving father figure, and the kind of husband every woman prayed for. But now, staring at this boy who seemed too comfortable at the gravesite, Margaret felt a sharp stab of confusion, followed by something darker, fear. The boy looked up and saw her. His eyes were wide, filled with something that looked like guilt or recognition. Without a word, he placed the flowers down carefully and stood. "Do you know my husband?" Margaret asked, her voice trembling. The boy didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. With shaky hands, he held out to her. Margaret's breath caught in her throat as she saw what was on it. It was a picture of Charles, her Charles, smiling, his arm draped around a young woman Margaret had never seen before. And standing in front of them was the same boy. Margaret's knees buckled. She nearly collapsed on the spot. Her mind raced. Had her husband been hiding a secret life? Was this boy his son? Who was the woman in the picture? The boy opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, a shadow appeared behind him. A woman in a faded dress stepped forward. Her eyes locked on Margaret with a mix of sorrow and something that looked like regret. Margaret's world spun. The truth she thought she knew about her husband's life and death was about to unravel before her eyes, and what she was about to learn would change everything. Margaret clutched the photograph as though it were burning her skin. Her chest tightened and the world around her blurred. The boy's eyes, the woman's stare, and the graveyard silence pressed against her like a weight she couldn't bear. The woman stepped forward, her face solemn, her movements hesitant, as though she knew every step she took closer would shatter Margaret's reality even more. "Who are you?" Margaret demanded, her voice quivering but sharp, like a wounded animal forced to defend itself. The woman took a deep breath. "My name is Evelyn, and I think we need to talk about Charles." At the sound of her husband's name, Margaret felt her heart twist. She stumbled back, clutching the headstone for support. "You don't get to say his name," she spat, tears filling her eyes. "You don't know him." But Evelyn's gaze remained steady. "I knew him, Margaret, more than you can imagine, and so does this boy." She gently rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. The boy lowered his eyes, almost as if ashamed. Margaret's hands shook. The photograph was still in her grip, but she couldn't bring herself to look at it again. "You're lying. You must be lying. My husband was a good man. He loved me. He would never—" Her voice broke. Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "I wish it were a lie, but I have no reason to hurt you. Charles was my friend, my confidant, for years. And this boy," she turned to the child, her voice softening, "this boy is his son." The word struck Margaret like a thunderclap. The air seemed to vanish from her lungs. Her knees gave way, and she collapsed to the damp grass. Her gloved hands clawed at the earth, trying to hold on to something, anything, before her world crumbled completely. Her Charles' father? To another woman's child? "No," Margaret whispered, her face pale. "No, that's not true. You're trying to ruin his memory. My Charles was faithful. He was honest. He loved me." Evelyn's expression darkened, but there was no malice in her eyes, only pity. Sometimes love isn't simple. Sometimes people carry secrets not to hurt us, but to protect us. Margaret, Charles loved you. That much I know. But he also loved his son. He tried to live between two worlds, and in the end, it tore him apart. The boy's small voice finally broke through the tension. He used to tell me stories," he whispered, staring at the tombstone. "He said, He wanted me to grow strong, to be better than him. He promised he'd always be there for me. His voice cracked, tears filling his eyes. But he's not here anymore. Margaret's heart twisted painfully at the sight of the child crying. He looked so innocent, so lost, so much like her own grief reflected back at her. But still, her mind screamed this cannot be true. She turned to Evelyn, rage now simmering beneath her grief. If what you're saying is true, why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he say a word? I buried him, Evelyn. I sat by his hospital bed and held his hand as he took his last breath, and he didn't say anything, not one word. Evelyn's face fell. Because he knew it would destroy you. He wanted to keep his world apart. He thought he could protect everyone that way. But secrets have a way of surfacing, Margaret. Margaret's eyes darted back to the photograph. Charles's smile in that picture. It wasn't forced. It was warm, real, alive. The kind of smile she hadn't seen in years. Her breath quickened. Her hands began to tremble uncontrollably. And for the first time, she wondered, had she really known her husband at all? The wind picked up, rustling the trees around the graveyard. It was as if nature itself held its breath, waiting for what would happen next. I need answers, Margaret said finally, her voice low but firm. She looked straight at Evelyn. All of them. If you're telling the truth, then don't stand here and drip-feed me pain. Tell me everything. Evelyn hesitated. She glanced at the boy, then back at Margaret. Not here, she said softly. This place is for the dead. What I have to tell you, it's for the living. Come to my house tomorrow. I'll show you proof. Margaret's chest heaved. Part of her wanted to scream, to walk away, to never see this woman again. But another part, the part gnawed by the photograph in her hand, needed to know. She couldn't live with the not knowing. She nodded stiffly. Tomorrow, first thing. Evelyn placed a protective hand on the boy's shoulder and began to walk away. But just as they turned, Margaret called out, her voice breaking. What's his name? The boy stopped. He turned his tear-stained face toward her. My name is Samuel, he whispered. The name echoed in Margaret's chest, heavy and unfamiliar. Samuel, Charles's son. As Evelyn and Samuel walked out of the cemetery, Margaret sank to ground again, clutching the photograph to her chest. She stared at her husband's grave, her tears soaking the earth. Charles, she whispered, what did you do to me? What did you hide from me? The silence of the grave offered no answers, only the cold certainty that her life had been built on shadows she never saw. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Charles smiling in that photograph, smiling with a family she never knew existed. She heard Samuel's small, broken voice calling him father, and she felt the sharp sting of betrayal over and over. Morning couldn't come fast enough, and yet when it did, Margaret wasn't sure she was ready. With trembling hands, she picked up the photograph again and studied it. Behind the smiles, behind the carefully posed shot, she noticed something strange, something she hadn't seen before. In the corner of the picture, half hidden, was a piece of paper pinned to a wall. It had writing on it, words she couldn't make out, but what she could see sent a chill down her spine, because it wasn't just a photograph. It looked like a clue, and Margaret suddenly realized she hadn't even scratched the surface of her husband's secrets. Margaret's hands shook as she stared at the photograph again. The detail in the background, the paper pinned to the wall, wouldn't leave her mind. She couldn't read the writing, but one thing was clear. It wasn't just an ordinary picture. By morning, she was exhausted. Her eyes were red, her hair disheveled, but her resolve was strong. She needed answers, no matter how painful they were. So, when the clock struck 9, Margaret drove to the address Evelyn had given her. The neighborhood was modest, quiet, the kind of place Margaret had never imagined her husband setting foot in. She parked outside a small brick house and sat in the car for several minutes, clutching the steering wheel. Her heart pounded in her chest. Finally, she forced herself out. With trembling steps, she walked up to the door and knocked. It opened slowly, revealing Evelyn. She looked tired, as though carrying the weight of years of secrets. Behind her, Samuel peeked out, his wide eyes filled with both hope and fear. "Come in," Evelyn said softly. Margaret entered the house, her gaze sweeping across the room. It was simple but warm. Family photos lined the walls. Photos of Samuel at different ages. Some showed Evelyn smiling with him, but others, Margaret froze. There, in two of the frames, was Charles, her husband, his arm around Samuel, his smile genuine. Margaret's chest tightened. She reached out to touch one of the frames, her fingers trembling. "So it's true," she whispered. He really was living a second life. Evelyn sighed and gestured for Margaret to sit. On the table before them was a box, worn, its edges frayed from years of handling. Evelyn pushed it toward her. "He wanted you to have this," Evelyn said. "He wrote it before he died, but he asked me to wait until you were ready." Margaret stared at the box, her breath shallow. Slowly, she lifted the lid. Inside was a stack of letters, each one addressed in Charles's familiar handwriting. Her hand shook as she picked up the first envelope. It read, "To my dearest Margaret." Her throat closed. She couldn't bring herself to open it. Not yet. Instead, she looked at Evelyn. Why? Why didn't he tell me himself? Evelyn's eyes glistened. Because he was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of breaking your heart. But he also couldn't abandon Samuel. He thought he could carry both lives. But fate caught up with him before he could make things right. Margaret swallowed hard. She wanted to hate Evelyn, to scream at her, to run away. But looking at Samuel, this boy with Charles's eyes, Charles's smile, something inside her softened. She turned back to the box and finally tore open the first letter. Her husband's words spilled across the page. "My beloved Margaret, if you're reading this, then I am gone. There is no easy way to say what I have to say, and I pray you can forgive me. Years ago, I made a mistake that led to Samuel. But he is not a mistake. He is my son, my blood, and he deserves to be loved. I tried to protect you from this truth, but lies have a way of catching up. Please, Margaret, don't let anger consume you. Don't let hate take the place of love. Samuel is innocent. He needs family. He needs you." Margaret's tears splattered onto the page. Her heart ached with betrayal and love all at once. She had spent her life believing Charles belonged only to her, but now she was faced with the undeniable truth. Part of him lived on in this boy. Samuel's small voice broke the silence. "Do you hate me?" The question pierced Margaret's soul. She looked up, meeting the child's fearful gaze. He was trembling, clutching the edge of Evelyn's dress as though bracing for rejection. Margaret's lips quivered. Her first instinct was to say yes, to push him away, to protect her broken heart. But then she saw Charles's eyes staring back at her, the same eyes that once looked at her with love. And something shifted inside her. She knelt down in front of Samuel, cupping his small face in her trembling hands. "No, Samuel, I don't hate you." Her tears flowed freely. "I don't know if I'm ready, but I could never hate you, because you are a part of him." The boy's lip trembled. Slowly, he leaned into her embrace, and Margaret wrapped her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. For the first time since Charles's death, she didn't feel alone. Evelyn wiped her own tears, watching silently. "He will be proud," she whispered. Margaret pulled back, her voice hoarse but steady. "This doesn't erase the pain, or the betrayal, but I won't punish a child for his father's mistakes. Samuel deserves better than that. And maybe, just maybe, this is how I keep Charles alive." She looked at the box of letters again, knowing there were more truths waiting inside. More pain, more explanations, maybe even more secrets. But she also knew something else. The past couldn't be changed. But the future? That was still hers to shape. Sometimes the ones we love keep secrets, not because they never loved us, but because they were too afraid to lose us. Truth, no matter how painful, is always better than silence. And in the end, forgiveness doesn't erase the scars, but it gives us the strength to move forward.